you guys for coming. Nice to see you. Nice to see you up there. Just a few announcements. The next meeting will be Wednesday, September 16th at 11:30 back here. John Davis from Wheatstone will be joining us. Whether we don't know if that's going to be in person or online, he's got to find out. But that'll be fun to have Wheatstone with us. And I'm sure Kirk will plug his own thing here, but I'll plug it for him too. This Week in Radio Tech, that's on YouTube. That's a fun thing. There's one tomorrow with me, unfortunately, and my dad. He suckered me into it, unfortunately. That'll be. And then SBE membership. I always plug this. If you're not a member, I highly encourage you to become a member. There's just some great resources with the chapter, and they have two different levels. Your traditional, which is great, but the biggest bang for your buck is the SBE Members Plus. It does cost more, but you get all of their educational stuff for free, all their webinars, past and current, and and the future stuff, as well as their university courses. Just really good information to help you stay up to date with all the changes that just keep coming for us. And then they also do certification levels. That's something else we highly recommend. It tells companies that you know your stuff, and it's just really fun to have an email signature that has a bunch of letters after your name. So highly recommend you do that. And if you have until sometime, I think until the end of the year, if you do certify, or if you do want to certify, you can purchase Cert Preview, and if you use the code SBE48, that'll give you a little bit of a discount on that program. Anyways, let me do that. Anyways, Kirk, I think I'll hand it over to you.
Let's see if the screen share can work. Oh, I think it's going to. Good deal. I'm going to share the whole desktop and share. Oh, I got one slide that has some sound. So let's try that. Let's try the share. And, oh, come on. It wants a password to allow this. Good golly, Miss Molly. Okay. And I'll full screen that. We'll see if it looks good. F5. All right. You got that full screen?
Yes, sir.
All right. Cool. By the way, I like what you were promoting there about SBE Member Plus. And since I'm on the board of directors, we're adding a few more features to Member Plus. You're going to get a free checked bag, a seat upgrade, and access to the exclusive Member Plus lounge. So,
hey.
all those should be exciting features. All righty. Well, if we're ready to roll, whoops. All right, let's see if I can get this worked out now. Okay. So when the FCC came out with their proposed mandates, and now they are mandates, they go into effect when? At the end of August? Is that when they go into effect? Or September 1st? I think. Maybe I say that on one of the slides here.
29th of September.
There you go. September 29th. Okay, so we're a month and a half away or thereabouts. And I thought, well, that now's a good time not only to discuss and explain what the FCC is going to require, and I think there are some unanswered questions about how that may work, and reasonable IT security people can disagree. But the point is, let's up our security, make sure we've got bases covered, make sure there's not a hole in our patchwork. One thing that concerns me about the whole prospect of codifying what we need to do is that the broadcasters who most need to do this are the ones who are most likely to be completely unaware of these additional rules. I mean, so if having your Gates or Nautel transmitter or your barracks codec hanging out there in the DMZ of your router just because that works. If that's not scary enough for you, I'm not really sure how adding some rules are going to help that. And is the FCC going to come in and test that and create a fine? Is the FCC going to look for notice of potential liability prospects? Apparent notice of apparent liability prospects by going to Shodan.io and looking for broadcast products that are flapping out there in the breeze. I don't know, but it's worth talking about because I think we can all learn something from the process. And so I thought, hey, why not come up with not only the three things that the FCC wants, but some other security items that we need to be aware of as broadcast engineers. And even if you or I, even if we don't know how to implement some of these things, there are plenty of people we can ask. I mean, there is Amanda. You can ask her because she probably has an answer for it. And then there's resources out there like ChatGPT or your favorite AI large language model that can have some pretty good answers to these things. So, may I present to you the 10 commandments of broadcaster cybersecurity? The FCC rules are important, but they're not exactly light reading. In fact, this report and order from the FCC came down, and it's 111 pages, I think, or maybe anyway, it's over 100 pages. And I didn't want to read through the whole thing. I really didn't. So I just fed it to ChatGPT and said, "Tell me what's important here." And then a few things I went back and read what the report and order actually says. So the rules are important, but they're not light reading. And today we're going to try to translate the requirements and the broader best practices around them into 10 memorable commandments for real broadcast facilities. And let's see if we can get old Moses here to do something. I said, ChatGPT, make it dramatic. Make it dramatic. So there it is. So the FCC has adopted these final cybersecurity rules for EAS participants. The rules apply to EAS equipment, but also to studio transmitter link equipment. And I'm sure that would include everything from the public internet to IP radio links. And then, what do you know about your 950 STL? That's not really password protected. It's just hanging out there. And maybe the I don't know, the mischievous kind of guy or girl. I know a couple of them right here in Nashville who I know have sat within a mile of a transmitter site with a 950 STL receiver, and they have fired up their own little 950 transmitter and pointed it at the tower and taken over the station for a short time. Just, because it's fun. See what they could do. Well, I wasn't impressed and let them know that. But there are people out there who do that. Now, they're not going to take over a station for long term, but how hard would that be, really? I mean, I think you can go on eBay and buy 950 megahertz STL equipment, and it's analog, it's not encrypted. So, wow, there's a big hole there. So the rules apply to, as I said, to EAS equipment, STL link equipment, and remotely managed equipment that routes, processes, or inserts content into the program stream. And the three direct requirements are strong, unique passwords, prompt security patching, and firewalls or comparable network segmentation. The remaining commandments that we're going to look at here, these extend those minimums into a practical security posture, you might say, for an actual broadcast facility. And we're going to get to discuss some of these, maybe as we go along, maybe at the end, but I think these are worthy of some discussion to see how you may see implementation the same or differently than I'm presenting implementation here. So rule number one, commandment number one, thou shalt know what is connected. That's pretty basic. I think, we walk into a situation, we may not know what the previous engineer or IT people did. There can be a lot of history, maybe tribal knowledge that you're not part of the tribe yet. So you should maintain an accurate inventory of EAS equipment, automation systems, codecs, studio transmitter links, remote controls, transmitters, audio processors, AOIP devices, routers, and anything else capable of affecting the program stream. I got to wondering, gee, what all does this include? I mean, I've got 21 radio stations, and every single one of them has Axia gear in it, X nodes, and IP audio drivers, which have the same control protocol as the nodes do. Does that mean I need to put a strong password on every single piece of gear? Now, actually, Amanda and Chris and I were talking about this earlier today in preparation for our Tort podcast tomorrow. And, one could make an argument, hey, if it's a network unto itself inside the confines of your building, and one would have to gain access to the building in order to get to it, well, maybe you don't need heavy duty passwords on this equipment, since you either can't get to it from the outside, or if to get to it, you have to have a lot of credentials, like a VPN or a secure tunnel, something like that. So anyway, you gotta know your attack surface. Number 2, thou shalt not expose broadcast equipment. So place equipment behind a properly configured firewall. And I think we're all behind firewalls. I mean, Jiminy Christmas, when we built our radio station in American Samoa in the that would have been in the late 90s. Yeah, late 90s. The ISP on the island there, which was the phone company, Astica, American Samoa Telecommunications Authority or something like that. They didn't provide us with a router firewall. They just gave us a connection and said, here, you have 5 public IP addresses. Have a good day. And back then, I didn't know what a firewall was. So we just took their connection and hooked it into our Ethernet switch. And we gave 5 computers each a public IP address. And that was, it seems crazy now, but that was before Windows had a built-in firewall. So here was our C drive and our D drive of our, what was it? It was a BSI automation. And it's just flapping out there in the wind for anybody to see. And after about 9 months, maybe a year of operation, somebody came in and wiped our C drive because it was just hanging out there. So I think we're all, well, hopefully we're 27, 28 years now beyond that at this point. And I think we've all learned, I sure have. But it's hard to imagine a facility that doesn't have a firewall router with the internet connection. First of all, they give you one IP address, maybe a couple if you pay for that. But you're going to need a NAT router, network address translation router. So anyway, protect your remote access. Close every unnecessary router port. And that means you probably need to go back into the router and see what ports are forwarded and why. And whenever I do that, I always find something, hey, we're not using that anymore. Oh, that was an experiment. I need to kill that. So close those open ports. All right. Thou shalt banish default passwords. Of course, that's now such an easy thing to go look at a manual and see what the default password for a device is. Now, more and more devices, the default password may be the last 6 characters of the MAC address, or it just may be individually created for your piece of equipment, and it's on a sticker on the bottom of the piece of equipment. I know certainly plenty of routers are coming from the factory that way, and typically you can change that. I don't know if that eliminates the original password or not, but we're still buying transmitters, and most everything we might purchase and put into service has a factory default password. I think companies are definitely changing that as time goes on, or requiring you to change the password. And I'll give you an example. There was a software update 2 or 3 years ago for a product, the Omnia MPX node. Especially the decoder node. It's the same hardware couple jumpers get moved, and it boots up as the decoder, or it boots up as the encoder, depending on the jumper's selection. But if it's going to be a decoder, well, that version of the micro MPX protocol, that version, you have to push the stream to the endpoint, to the decoder. And so that, if you're on the public internet, if you don't have an IP radio link or something private, then you're going to have to open up a port. And I happen to open up a high port number and just do a port translation down to what the device wants. But I mean, that's just a tiny bit of security by obscurity, which really isn't security at all. But anyway, there was a firmware update that when you implement that, and now when you buy a new one, when you browse into it, the first thing it tells you, you've got to change the password. And it's got a pretty strong password requirement on it. So that's kind of a new thing. If you're an Axia, Telos, or Omnia user, usually those have default passwords. And because a lot of these things are just on my internal AOIP network, I leave the default password what it is, because it's not exposed to the outside world. You got to have access to my little world inside the radio station. Well, anyway, because it has to receive from the outside world, and I must say though, even though the port that you receive the micro MPX stream is going to be different than the port that you browse in with your browser. Of course, it's default port 80. You can change it if you want to. But I think we're going to see more manufacturers doing that. That you turn it on, you browse into the first time, and they say, first thing, got to change the password. I know even years ago, the audio processors designed by Leif Clayson. So this would be the Omnia 9, for example, and the old Omnia 7, and then some television processors. Leif would design these such that you had to establish a whitelist or a blacklist. And so you could whitelist all the IPs on your local network, but you at least had to do that. You had to create a whitelist. So on these FCC rules are not only requiring a 15-character password, but they're requiring that it not contain a dictionary word. And by the way, I wonder if that means an English dictionary, because a couple, 3 years ago, we had a hack into somebody registering on our SIP extensions. And I had used fairly simple passwords because my previous SIP provider, you had to register using a fully qualified domain name. In other words, you had to go to a fairly unknown domain in order to register your SIP device. You could not just go to the IP address. Your request had to contain somehow the FQDN. Fully qualified domain name. And that was just another ring of security around the whole operation. And so the the PBX provider said, you can use simpler passwords because we have this FQDN requirement. Okay. Well, we went to a different SIP provider, and they didn't have the FQDN requirement, but I still had in my head using simple passwords. Well, got a frantic call from the SIP provider saying, Kirk, the FCC has contacted us, and people are making scam phone calls from one of your phone numbers. And they've done that by registering remotely onto as one of your extensions. So, of course, real quick, we upgraded all the passwords to something complicated. But my scheme at that moment was, well, I'm going to do some punctuation, and then I'm going to do a curse word in Spanish. Because I was learning Spanish because my wife speaks Spanish, and then some more punctuation, and then a 3-digit number that was unique. So every password was indeed unique. It was the 3-digit extension number backwards. So extension 701 would have a 107 in it, and 702 would be 207, and so forth. So at least that was unique. And then, built up with some punctuation and the curse word in Spanish. I thought, well, that's interesting. Who's going to try a curse word in Spanish? Well, maybe somebody would. But that was my solution at the time. I think it would probably still hold water with the new requirements. By the way, I was curious as to Are there 15-character dictionary words? Now, you're not supposed to use a dictionary word, but I was just curious. Sure enough, there are. Ask ChatGPT for 15-character dictionary words, and there's hundreds, if not 1,000 of them. So, yeah. Anyway, you can't use that. You can't use that anyway. Yeah, if you're going to have different passwords, they have to be unique. And that's different for us. We, at each one of our sites, our broadcast markets, we have a high security password and a low security password, lower security. And we tend to use the same high security password on all the kind of things that the FCC is asking for. So our IP radio links, our audio processors, just all the things that we would want to have a high security password, but they're all the same. So FCC says, nah, can't do that. So they need to be unique. Well, if they're going to be unique, you're going to have to use a password manager. There's no, I mean, even for my phone extensions, there's no way I'm going to actually, it has to be suggested to me, what to use. So password managers, pick your favorite. I don't know of any that are terrible. I saw a video a couple of years ago describing that the password manager built into Google Chrome browser is actually really good. It's actually really convenient too. In other words, maybe a little bit too convenient. We have a number of computers on our network that tend to be engineering oriented, and if you bring the browser up, it's logged in to the engineering Gmail account. Well, that means that all the passwords are available to all the gear. Now, that computer is hard to get to, but I'm not sure that's going to stick around as a best practice. For my own personal use, I use Bitwarden, and I pay them whatever their minimum annual fee is, and maybe a 12 or 20 bucks a year, and I feel like I get a good value with that. But Bitwarden, if I don't use it for a while, it'll sign out. So when I come to one of my own computers and I need a password that's in Bitwarden, I got to go log back into Bitwarden, and that's a really strong password. So if any of you have thoughts on that topic, that would be great. Of course, a password manager with two-factor authentication would be even better. I guess what worries me is the fact that all my browsers on all my production computers, not sales computers, not studio computers, not admin computers, but things that are involved in being on the air, those I'll stay logged in to Chrome browser, and so that all the passwords are available. So I need to look up and see if there's a way to automatically sign out of that. Of course, if you sign out of it, then you don't get the syncing and things like that. I don't know. Worth looking into. Okay. Banish default passwords. Let's see what else we got here. Okay, we were talking about this. Thou shalt use multi-factor authentication. And it seems to me that the best practice for multi-factor is indeed to use one of these code generator programs like Authenticator. And so, I've got SAP Concur and a couple other things on my on Google Authenticator. And there's other authenticators too. That way you're not depending on an SMS message to get your two-factor authentication, or you're not relying on email. And there's some people out there who warn, hey, SMS is broken and that somebody could intercept your message. I think that's pretty rare, not a high possibility, but apparently it is a possibility. So under two-factor authentication, if an authenticator type of program is offered, then with an authenticator app, then maybe that's a good way to go. And the idea behind that is if a password is stolen or guessed, that shouldn't be enough to be keys to the kingdom. So, all right. And in fact, we were talking about this on the Torch show last week. I raised my concern about, okay, if you're into one of my engineering production computers at any of my stations, you got keys to the kingdom. And instantly everybody said, well, are you using two-factor authentication on your remote access? And that answer was, oh, no, I'm not. It's offered. In fact, the company offering my remote access, I tend to like using dwservice.net. I got real pissed off at TeamViewer, but DW Service offers two-factor authentication. All right, moving on. Remember thy patches and keep them current. Okay. When I worked for Telos, they issued security upgrades and patches. Couple of the interesting things that Telos ended up doing, I'm not aware of Telos issuing security patches or software patches because there was something broken about the security. What I recall is that, and this is good advice, whether it's Telos or anybody else, but I'll give you the example of why it happened at Telos. Telos had some possibilities, and then eventually did sell a lot of equipment to some large broadcasters. And I'm thinking of broadcasters in Australia. Two large outfits, Australian Broadcasting Company, ABC, and 9 Networks. And both of these companies had their own engineering staff, IT security staff, and they did penetration testing. So they said, look, if we're going to buy $2, $3, $4 million worth of your gear, we want to make sure it meets our specs. So we sent them some gear. They checked it out, and they said, for the most part, okay, but here's a punch list of things we need changed. For example, Telnet access to your devices, that needs to be turned off by default, not on by default. Some of our devices, like X nodes, had SIP access or SIP connectivity available, and it was turned on by default. And they said, nope, if we want that off by default, if we want to turn it on, we will. That's on us. But SIP needs to be off by default. And there were some other things too. And that was a really good thing, both for the customer and for Telos, to be told or be advised, hey, if we're going to buy this equipment, here are the things that concern us, and you need to fix them. And they were all fixable. Another thing that came up was the security of handling the source code for these devices, whether it's an audio console or audio processor or some Axia gear, that we had to provide some kind of surety that the source code was secure and that nobody could get into it and add something or change something. So I don't understand the procedures that went in behind that, but I know that happened. That got implemented. And my point in telling you that story about Telos and those Australian broadcasters is that if you're dealing with a company, you're going to buy some gear from a company, you might want to ask them, hey, what have your largest customers said about penetration testing? And what have you done about that? So if you buy a product from Telos, and I'm sure from others as well that have sold to these big outfits, ask them, have you paid attention to pen testing? All right. Separate your networks. Thou shalt separate thy networks. Segment broadcast systems from business, from guest networks, public Wi-Fi, and general purpose IT networks. Limit the traffic between segments to only what is operationally necessary. Now, I got to tell you that, of course, VLANs are very helpful for doing that. I need to find out for myself, and this is a place where I need to get educated. Maybe on tomorrow's podcast, Amanda can point me in the right direction here. But I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to provide, some limited connectivity between otherwise logically separated networks. In the early days of Axia and even to today, I suppose, the easy advice for security is, and to keep your equipment sane, is to just air gap your Axia network or your AOIP network, from opening that up to any brand, keeping that network air gapped from your business network. Now there are some exceptions to that, but they usually involve a lot of money and a lot of IT expertise to make them both work on the same switches. So be aware. The easiest and cheapest thing to do is simply keep them air gapped from each other. And air gap except for a few devices, typically at least one computer, maybe several, that have two network interface cards in them, and they would look at both. And automation systems are a prime example, where the automation system, you want to run an IP driver in the automation system, and yet the automation needs to be hooked up to at least to an admin network, so other people can get to it. By the way, I'm working for this company, Max Connect, and Max Connect right now is closely tied in with Logitech, the console manufacturer from Houston, Tag Borland, and they have come out with a really smart piece of gear. I wish it was here 15 years ago, but it's called the Jetpack, and it's a little metal box with power connection, of course, but two data connections. One is a USB connection, and the other is an Ethernet connection. And you take this box and you plug it into USB on your computer. Could be an automation computer or for doing a digital audio workstation for doing production. And your automation or whatever applications you have, they think they're talking to a USB sound card. And this box, the Jetpack, turns that audio both in and out of the system into LiveWire channels. And I think it'll do AES67 as well. So it has some wide compatibility. And you use an app in Windows to configure the Jetpack and it looks like you're configuring an Axia node, for example, with source channels and destination channels. The point there is, you're still air gapped then, because I don't know of any virus or malware that says, I'm going to go out the USB port and jump onto the Axia network. So that's an interesting benefit of using a product like that. All right. Thou shalt not grant more access than necessary. So give users, and vendors, and applications only the permissions that they require. Remove obsolete accounts and disable unused services and revoke vendor access when the work is finished. And that made me think. And I went back through, we often use dwservice.net to give a vendor remote access to one of their systems at our stations. And I had several that were left over. Now, when I set them up, I tend to just set them up for, say, a week. And I said, hey, because it has a start time and an end time in DW Service when you create a share like that. So usually the problem takes care of itself. But if I'm not sure of how long the vendor is going to need access, I may make it perpetual, but then I have to remember to go back and check it. Well, every once in a while, I just go in there and see, oh yeah, that was natural log. They got done with that 2 months ago. Let's revoke that access. So. Lots. I guess you need to go through all your accounts that have access. And by the way, that reminded me, we've got a number of voice trackers who have an account in our Playout One systems. The voice tracking on Playout One is just super cool, and but we set up an account for a person who does voice tracking, and I know for sure that my business partner has discontinued the services, shall we say, from some of the voice trackers. Well, we need to discontinue their account too. I need to make a note of that. Hey, Larry, let's make sure that these people don't have access anymore. Thou shalt make backups and prove they work. Well, we've had enough hard drive failures that the proof has occurred whether we scheduled it or not. You should back up, of course, your automation databases, your device configs, router and firewall settings, IP radio settings. That's a pretty key one right there. Licenses or documentation, other critical data. Keep that protected or offline copies and test the restoration thereof. We have tested IP radio configurations because we had an IP radio fail. Got a new one shipped in, and it was a particular configuration, and I wasn't on site. In fact, it was in American Samoa, and I didn't want to try to talk somebody through all this. So luckily, The last time we made any configuration change to the IP radio at the studio, I had the presence of mind to back it up. And you should think about that. When you make an important change to a piece of gear, well, now's the time to back it up, whether it's a router or an automation system or anything that you may have to go restore. As far as backing up the automation system and the music database and all the audio, we've had a hard drive failure or two in our computers that run Playout One, and I really like that Playout One has built-in backup stuff, and maybe others do too. I'm just familiar with the ones that are in Playout One. It'll let you back up to an internal hard drive or a USB connected hard drive. So it's so easy just to go get a 2 terabyte drive and USB connected on the back. And every 10 minutes, it'll go and add things that have been added and delete things that have been deleted. But also they give you cloud access. I mean, they let you use your own account. So we pay for extra storage on Google Drive, and every 10 minutes, there are changed ads or whatever is changed. And this is both the SQL database and the audio itself, logs, all that gets backed up every 10 minutes or so. And there's a monitoring program with Playout One that monitors lots of different functions of Playout One. So we might have up to 8 radio stations under one roof, and Playout One will show us, hey, you're not getting consistent backups. Oh, well, what happened? Somehow we got logged out of Google Drive, or your USB connected hard drive is full, or hey, we're trying to send metadata to this endpoint and it's not acknowledging. So there's a lot of things that maybe your automation vendor can help you with in terms of backups and making sure these things work. Thou shalt watch over thy systems. Well, that's pretty general, isn't it? The idea here is review logs, monitor for login attempts and configuration changes, and establish alerts for unusual activity. Now, I don't know all about doing that. One thing I have done is I've taken some logs just out of curiosity. It's not a regular effort of mine, but I've taken some logs and just made a CSV file or whatever its output would be, and sent that to ChatGPT and say, hey, do you see anything unusual here? Do you see a lot of mistyped or wrongly entered passwords, for example? And I haven't heard anything negative back. Everything's always been okay. With our phone system, our PBX in the cloud, we buy that service from a company called Clearly IP, which has just changed their name. They were bought by a company called 14IP, I believe, 14ip.com. But it's free PBX in the cloud, and it has some firewall protection in front of that. And yeah, they let me know about failed administrative login attempts. And it goes in cycles. I'll go for months and not hear a peep. And then we'll go for a few days, and everybody and his brother from typically outside the U.S. Is trying to log in, and lots of password attempt failures. And we got that, fail to ban. That's part of the firewall package. And so, after 5 wrong attempts, then that IP address is totally banned. Although you can watch it, sometimes they'll just use the next IP address and the next IP address. But again, after 5 wrong attempts, they're banned. And now we have white lists on all that. So if I'm out on the road and I need to go make an administrative change to our phone system, I can't do it, at least not from where I am. I need to go remote into one of my radio stations, which are whitelisted, and then make the change from there, or this office right here where I'm at here in Nashville. So I guess watch over thy systems. Yeah, means all these things. Try to find trouble before dead air finds it for you. And number 10, thou shalt prepare for the day of trouble. Maintain and practice an incident response plan and know how to isolate affected equipment. Preserve evidence if you can or know how to do that. I'm not sure I do. Notify management. Okay. Contact vendors and authorities, and keep programming on the air using safe backup or manual procedures. It seems like a few years ago, we would hear fairly regularly of broadcasters getting hit by ransomware and trying to figure out what to do about it. I haven't heard much about ransomware lately. I don't know if the attack vectors have changed or if we're just getting better at catching ransomware problems. Don't know. So here is a summary of these things. I can send you the PDF of this slide, but also I supplied to Amanda. I supplied a link and a PDF to kind of an executive summary in text form, more like a white paper of this presentation. So you don't have to look through all the old English. It's written in modern English. So I'm going to quit sharing because I think we're done with that. I would love to have some discussion on any of these points that we brought up. If your experience is better or different, or if you say, Kirk, you're way off base here, here's what you should be telling people.
All right. Are you hearing me okay?
Yeah, hear you fine.
Well, it's my sense, just based on the way the FCC operates and their staffing, is that I don't think that any of us probably need to worry too much about the FCC coming in and checking our networks and all of those things. I think what is going to happen is when somebody gets an attack, someone's hacked, something like that, and it comes to light, I think that's the point at which they'll jump in and do some forensic stuff and figure out that, hey, you didn't do this and this and this. And then we move over into the adding insult to injury zone where they stick a big fine on you in addition to, in addition to all the harm that you experienced from whatever the hack was or what have you. So anyway, that's just my opinion. I just don't think they have the manpower to be looking at stuff like that. So anyway, just my opinion, but I'll bet that I'm right.
I think, yeah, that sounds like a very likely scenario. We can talk for let's hit that ransomware topic. Has anybody been hit or heard of other broadcasters being hit by ransomware lately? Yeah.
It's been a couple of years ago, but we did get hit on our streaming encoder in Chicago, and it was a real easy fix. We just took that hard drive out, put another one in, reloaded the operating system, and reloaded the encoder software. That was before we moved to appliances, to stream blades. But anyway, that was pretty simple just because of the nature of the thing. It was a very purpose-built device that it was easy to broom it and start over and get rid of the ransomware. But we did learn some things about that, and we haven't had it happen since, thank God.
Is anybody hiring a service to try to, I'm sure there's better words for this, but to try to trick your employees into clicking something that they shouldn't? When I worked here in Nashville at Channel 4, when I did weather, it was owned by Meredith at the time. And boy, they sure tested us about once a month. They'd send some enticing sounding or official sounding emails and encourage us to click on something. And of course, if you did, you had to go talk to somebody. I never did, but in fact, there was a button, hey, report malicious activity. And, like a good soldier who recognized this, I did that, but I'm sure not everybody did. Are any broadcasters doing this? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we have some people in here that they're doing it.
No, but since you mentioned it, we just might start.
I have no idea what these services cost. I can imagine for Meredith, it wasn't cheap. But
I've been seeing a lot of it on TikTok of all things, where employees are like they're posting their experience, and like one of them was they did it using their health insurance provider. So like it looked like a legit email from their health insurance, and they clicked it and got in trouble.
And one of the ways we used to get phishing attempts was somebody would act like a bank, and 90% of the time it wasn't my bank. So just easy to dismiss out of hand. Well, it's not very hard to do a little what's the word for psychological engineering, where you talk to somebody, you call somebody, and who's your insurance provider? Oh, it's Blue Cross Blue Shield. Well, it's pretty likely anyway. But then you go craft emails that look like they're from Blue Cross Blue Shield, and you're not wasting your time, sending emails from Anthem or anybody else. So it wouldn't be hard to target those better. I know that I was asking about more recent experiences. My ex-wife, her foundation and medical research organization, they got scammed. Not her, but one of her employees got scammed by, hey, we're changing banks, so when you send this payment in, here's our new routing number and checking account number, and they fell for it. And I don't know what the consequences were if they ever got their money back, but it was in the dozens of thousands of dollars that they sent. And I've heard of this, of other people falling for the same thing. I want to say, well, I won't say who, but I mean, there's a couple of broadcast adjacent organizations that also had that happen. Has anybody had that happen at your place? The banking? Yeah. And I suppose that's where you pick up the phone and say, Sue Ellen, I got an email here. It says you changed bank accounts. Really?
Actually, with what happened with me is someone, and we don't know who, someone contacted our accounting department, and said they were me and that I was changing banks. And so they gave them new routing and account numbers for direct deposit. And so one pay period, I didn't get paid. I didn't discover it for a couple of weeks, but said, hey, I didn't get paid. And then they did a little research, and it turns out they sent my pay to this new routing and account number. And anyway, fortunately, they were able to recover it and all that, and I did get paid. So, but it was so easy, so easy.
Oh, one of the hacks that we didn't mention, we talked about audio, hacking in there, changing the audio source. And we all know that, well, to tell you, one of the hacks has been hacking RDS encoding that may be a feature built into your transmitter. And this happened to some Gates Air transmitters. Nothing wrong with Gates Air, but the implementation was that the broadcaster had left the default username and password in the Gates Air. And somehow the hacker gained access to the UI of the transmitter, probably through an open port, just scanning, and found a port and discovered what this thing was and looked up the username and password. Or maybe they were looking for these transmitters because they knew they could get into them. And my understanding was the station wasn't using the built-in RDS. They had their own separate RDS, but this person enabled the transmitter's built-in RDS and changed it to either the wrong thing or something nasty. And then before they left, they changed the password. So the broadcaster could not easily get back in. They had to go to the site and talk to Gates Air about how to reset the password so they could regain entry. It was earlier this year, we had at my stations, one of my stations, where we have an N+1 backup kind of transmitter at one of our transmitter sites. And it's centrally located in the coverage area of several of our stations, that if one of our stations dies, we can go on the air from this lower power place. And we feed it with a Barracks equivalent. It's a Pico brand, but I believe the circuit board inside is Barracks, and it's just got Pico software and branding and on it. Well, anyway, we were just doing a push over our IP radio link. So that was reasonably secure. I mean, the link is encrypted, and the stuff isn't exposed out to the public internet unless you get into one of our computers. So what happened was we one day we noticed that the Pico encoder had failed. The decoder's out there working fine, but it's got no stream to decode. And I'm thinking, well, can I send the Pico a stream from somewhere else? Because we were wanting to replay a station in a different market, but it's still within the general coverage area. Um, and then I wonder if that Pico, instead of being sent a stream, if it can reach out and grab a stream of some kind, maybe just a public stream, or maybe I can create a high bit rate stream of a higher quality. And sure enough, the Pico, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. At the transmitter side, it actually was a Barracks brand. At the studio, it was a Pico brand. The two work together because they're the same thing. And I had only heard of people pushing a stream to a Barracks. Well, it turns out all the barracks that I know of now will receive a stream as well. They can subscribe to a stream. And so at the city of origin, I created an extra instance of stream encoding, just a private stream, and I already have a port forwarded for that. You have to do a slash and specify the subfolder. And so I just went into the unit at the transmitter site and told it, hey, go pick up this stream. And it did. And that was a wonderful solution. And it's more secure. Nothing has to be forwarded at the transmitter site or at the studio that feeds it. So, and at the studio where the stream's coming from, that's already been port forwarded. And all it does is hook you to streams. You can't do anything else. There's no UI there. So my point there is that if you are having to push audio to a port that's open and forwarded, you may want to check and see and learn, like I did, that, hey, you don't have to do it this way. You can actually subscribe the other way. And sure, you may need an open port back at the other end for it to reach and subscribe to, unless there's a rendezvous service in the middle. I could have gone and subscribed to our public stream, but that's at a lower bit rate. That's at like 64 kilobits, and it's HEAAC. And I thought, well, if I can provide it with a high bit rate stream, I'm going to do that. And I already had the port forwarded anyway to the encoder. So there you go. So there may be things you can do right now to enhance your security that you just didn't even know about, like I keep discovering every few weeks. That's all I have, unless Amanda, you've got some sage advice, or unless you want to save your sage advice for tomorrow's show.
Hello, Kirk.
Hey. Hi, how you doing, Dan? Good to see you, Dan.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah, just one comment and one question. I would just recommend that an organization knows what they're going to do in the case of some type of hack. So who are you going to call, right? Because obviously you don't want to try to figure out who you're going to call when it happens. So if you use a managed security services provider, particularly if you're using them for managed security services, then that's probably who you want to call. If you use an MSP just for project-based stuff, maybe not. Mm-hmm. Depends on the kind of relationship you have with them and how much bandwidth they have. But and there are companies that do breach retainers, but those are for bigger organizations. And bigger organizations generally are going to do planning. They're going to do cybersecurity planning scenarios where they are going to have some kind of book, and they're going to know, here's the number that we call if we detect a hack.
Good point.
But yeah, so just kind of have a phone number, a company that you're going to call if it happens, and if someone doesn't know who that is, I can help find them. So
you bring up a really good point here, because there's no one size fits all solution, because you just mentioned there are large broadcast organizations, medium ones, and small ones, and mom and pops, but also managed service providers also come in all sizes. One of our members at our SBE here is himself an MSP, small time, but the guy knows what he's doing, and honest as the day is long. And I would think even a smallish broadcaster, a mom and pop organization, could and should afford to have him on retainer. At least have him, right, do a sweep and check what they've got, and then be available for follow-up service should something happen. So I'm glad you brought that up. Right.
Yeah, you can have a breach retainer where the commitment is to get boots on the ground within 24, 48 hours, whatever. So, and then my question is, will there be free food and drink in the Member Plus Lounge?
Yes, bring all you like.
Hey, Kirk, Jeff Devine from KTLF here. The one thing I would add to that last question about a response is typically, depending on the type of hacker situation, we've had to contact an attorney right away because there's a technical aspect to it, and then there's also a legal exposure aspect to this as well. And I know a lot of companies have started to actually get insurance to cover those type of scenarios, which would include attorney fees. So just from real world experience, I just wanted to bring that up because we actually called our attorney before we called the IT experts to come in and help us out.
Ah, good deal. And I'm sure, obviously, this would apply very strongly to publicly held organizations, but that doesn't mean that private organizations shouldn't also have similar arrangements. How much do you have to risk? It's a good question to ask.
Yep.
Well, thank you for the comments, everybody. Dan and Jeff and Amanda and Chris, everybody. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, thank
I'm
you.
done. I'm done.
Very good stuff. I got things to think about now. There's been a constant stream of purple smoke coming out of my ears for the last few weeks, trying to work through our systems.
Anybody else?
Yeah, anybody else? All right. Well, thank you so much, sir. I appreciate it.
Oh, okay.
I'll see you
Chris,
tomorrow.
good seeing everybody. And yeah, Chris and Amanda, we'll see you tomorrow. You guys have a good afternoon. Appreciate you.
All right.
Yeah. Bye-bye.